The topic of this video is going to be networking. And again, this is another buzzword that you hear all the time. And what it really evokes is this image of a senior student at a career fair, and they're working the room to try to get leads on a job. And for a lot of people, myself included, this is how I treated my job search. And this is not very efficient, and honestly, it's a poor way of landing that job. It's an old school approach, and it's one that in the information age really doesn't work out that well. So, in terms of networking itself, the goal is to expand your sphere of people you know, but functionally, in getting ahead in your career, you're networking in order to get direct referrals for a job. Now, the best referrals are through people that you know. You've probably heard the euphemism plenty of times. It's who you know. That for all time has been the best way to get a job. It's who you know. If you're buddies with a manager and the manager notices that there is a job opening, you stand a huge shot of at least getting an interview for that job. And really, networking is about getting those referrals, but also getting you into the interview room. So there are various guides to networking, and they have numerous different styles in order to try to get these direct referrals. There's a company called the Cheeky Scientists, and they market themselves to PhD students in STEM, and they give a lot of advice that honestly makes finding a job like taking your LinkedIn profile and treating it like a Tinder account. Now, to use a metaphor on this, this networking is a lot like dating, and that extreme is more like your 5-minute speed dates, or like swiping right and swiping left on various career employers by, say, going to an area, talking for 5 minutes, and then asking them straight up whether or not, oh, do you have positions? Would you be able to refer me to them? Can I get your business card? Stuff like that. So that is one extreme. Another extreme is, using the same dating metaphor, is having the high school sweetheart. And this is where you just encountered somebody throughout your journey in life, relatively young, and you just want to stick with them. It's like, okay, well, good for you. So an example for this would be someone who, say, goes to work for their parents. Either they own a company or they work for a company, and they're able to get you into this company relatively easily. So their job search isn't necessarily that difficult because they've got this great connection. Another example would be if you worked an internship or a co-op, and they tend to hire a lot of people who had done these summer positions for them. So in my experience, the best referrals will come from the people that you've known for a long time, not from the person who you have just met, talked for 5 minutes, got their business card, and asked them about positions they have available, but someone who's known you and seen you at meetings for a couple of years, or maybe they came to your school and had a talk with you, or gave a talk, and you came up and talked to them later, and had infrequent emails that followed after that. So the basis of your relationship, if they know you in that context, isn't from you, the job seeker. The basis of the relationship is you, the student who's trying to learn more about the career in front of them. So, what does this have to do with being an underclassman, particularly your freshman or sophomore year, as a chemistry major or a chemical engineer? Well, the goal for this networking as an underclassman, it's really twofold. The first is to learn about the possible jobs and roles and where you fit in to the field as a whole. And this is also serves to function in gaining long-term academic and industrial contacts that you're able to use during your long-term or your formal job search later on. So I am going to use one of the tools that's given by one of those, speed dating networking people, and that's called the informational interview. Now, as a freshman and as a sophomore, it is my firm opinion that 1, maybe 2 times a month, you want to conduct what they call an informational interview. And this is where you call a professional chemist or an engineer, and you ask them about your job. You basically interview them. You find out what they're doing, how they got to where they are, and advice that they would give to you as someone who is just blossoming into this field and learning what's out there and learning their place in it. Now, if you start as a freshman, say your first semester of freshman year, you'll have over 30 of these informational interviews under your belt by the time you're looking for a job or that you're applying for grad school. Typically, that is in the early fall semester of your senior year. So you should really be starting in late July for job searches specifically, and then also for grad schools, you're typically applying to those in October. And then, of course, it just keeps going as time goes on. So you might be asking yourself, okay, well, that sounds simple enough, but where do I find these people? So especially for an underclassman, I've got 5 suggestions here. And if you see me looking down, it's because I'm referencing notes that I have written for these videos. The first is that you can approach guest speakers who have come to your classroom, or organizations who have come to campus and given a talk. And you're going to have to branch out a little bit for this. You might attend, say, an engineering talk if you're a chemistry major, or you might go to a biochemistry talk. Now remember, there's a huge diversity within engineering and chemistry, so be open to the possibilities. The second are recent alumni. These could be senior friends of yours when you're a sophomore who graduated the year before. Or you can ask upperclassmen that you've gotten to know if they know some people who have gotten a job or gone on to grad school, and hey, can you put me in touch so I can ask them about what they're doing? So third is that you can attend professional society meetings. And as an underclassman, I wouldn't go real out of my way to try to do that, but especially as an upperclassman, you want to attend local ACS, local AICHE meetings to get to know the people around you. So the people that you meet at these meetings, obviously you can ask them quite frankly about what they do or schedule a time with them later on. Fourth are your professors. This is more in terms of advice for academic careers, and I would advise you that if you want to go down this route, only interview a few, or like 2 or 3 of them to get a general idea. A lot of these stories tend to blend together. And then finally, you can quote-unquote cold call people over LinkedIn, where you start making connections with people at companies that you might be interested in working in, and then you just send them a message and ask them. This sounds a lot more intimidating than it really is. I've talked with Luis Martinez at the Entrepreneur Office, and he says that the entrepreneur students have something like an 80% success rate in people who are just willing to speak with them about what they do. As an underclassman, you are a lot more non-threatening than upperclassmen because obviously you're not asking for a job immediately. You're not graduating for 2 years, for 3 years. You're not really asking much of them other than to share their experiences. So in terms of questions that you can ask them, the more personal, the better. By that, I mean you can interview, you can have a phone call, but it's better to interview them over Skype. Sorry, we got interrupted there. All right, so I was talking about the more personal the interview, the better, and by that I mean if you have a phone call, well, it might be better to do a Skype meeting or a video chat than a phone call, and obviously it's better in person. Like if it's somebody local or you're at the meeting speaking with them in person, that's better than a video call. If you're able to tour a facility, that could be even better, and you might find that it doesn't hurt to ask, but a lot of local companies would probably be willing to let you come through, see the plant floor, speak with other people who work there, that kind of thing. And job shadowing them, I guess, would be the logical extension of that, where you get to see. I'm not sure if how feasible those are nowadays, especially if they're working on something that is secret. But again, I mean, it doesn't really hurt to ask. So what this is all getting at is that by the end of your sophomore year, you should have a much clearer idea of what professional chemists and engineers do on a day-to-day basis, and have an idea of some fields that seem interesting to you. And this will inform your job search over the next couple of years, and this will also inform whether or not you want to go to grad school, what you're interested in researching. Because I think the worst thing you can do is to just hunker down, only focus on your studies, and then just let the chips fall where they may when it comes down to deciding the next step in your career. That's what I did. That's what a lot of other people do. And honestly, I think you're doing yourself a disservice, especially with a lot of the great resources that you have around you. So the idea here is that you want to be very proactive and you want to do it early. And to summarize, you want to have these relationships built up early so you've got this bank of people that you're able to talk to and provide job referrals to you when you start your formal job search. It doesn't hurt to have more people on your side. And one thing I neglected to mention here was that keep up with these people who have spoken with you, especially if you don't see them regularly. Like maybe every few months you can ask them an extra question or, comment on something that they put on LinkedIn or something, just so that they know you were there and this wasn't just like a one-off. Because as I said, these long-term relationships will benefit you way more than the short-term relationships with someone you just randomly meet at a meeting.